Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are talking about food in Wolfram Alpha and Wolfram Language. And this is a continuation of a meeting we did a few days ago. And let's start taking a look. Okay, so this is this plot. So this is already an expanded version because that font is bigger than usual. This is a plot of, are we going to call it compass plot?
I think a fair amount of the literature uses this phrase, but we could use something else. I mean, that's not so established.
I think the original name of it was the nutrition compass, if I remember correctly.
It seems to make a lot more sense to me.
Sure, we could call it a
average nutrition compass.
Sure.
And I wouldn't say plot because it's kind of obvious it's a plot. Arguably. Okay, so what are we showing here? To avoid legend label collisions.
So you had originally wanted it to be much smaller than what you saw in the last meeting. So yep. I set it up to be smaller. And I think we had talked about doing it down to about 120 by 120. But it got a little tricky with collisions with the legends and the labels.
Which legends? These legends over here?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so on the alpha results, we only show 4 nutrients, but in entity value with the property we show multiple if you ask for it via a qualifier. And so in order to
this one here, for example.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
But so wait a minute. So this is in so in Wolfram Alpha, can we in fact show these multi compasses or whatever?
We could. Right now it's not set up that way, but we could set that up.
Why don't we have a more button for that pod?
We can put a more button on there.
I mean, if there are obvious things to add. Is that really capital letter there that it starts with?
I believe design told us to use a capital letter there.
Well, but that's not a question of design. It's a question of what the convention is for vitamin, which I don't know. Okay, but what's the problem? But the red, I don't understand what the red outer boundary is here. Oh, I see. That's the...
Yeah, that's the FDA's daily value.
What are the dotted lines?
The dotted lines are roughly half between, so that's like 50% in this case. So 100% daily value is the red line, and 50% of that is where the dashed lines are.
Look, if we're going to talk about graphics, we should get some designer here. That seems obscure to me because I don't make the connection between the red line and the dashed gray lines. Get what I'm saying? If the dashed gray lines are supposed to be, how much of this stuff do we have? Yeah, right. But if we're going to use that, it's got to have some connection. If can we see if Jeremy Davis is around?
I'll find him.
Okay. Okay, let's keep going and we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay. What happens when this degenerates to a point? When there's only one example here?
That is what you're looking at right now. That one that your mouse is on, before that was not showing up, and I fixed an issue with it where it was just being dropped altogether, and now I have it just make it nice and visible so you can see it.
Why is there a comma between fried, like chicken? What?
That's an issue that needs to be fixed. We'll talk about that once we get to the input interpretation stuff. That's a separate detail.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Let's loop back to this when we get Jeremy, and we'll talk about these graphics here.
Sure.
Okay.
So you had asked for several things to be renamed, and I got through most of them, I think. These are just examples.
Great.
I want to see what they look like since they're not...
I thought we were making these nice and small.
We will, yes. For now, I'm just focusing on the renames. Those will take a little more time to figure out the right way to change those out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make those where we're agreeing to make those lines. Then I will talk. Let's basic nutrients. Okay. Oh, that's up there. Okay. 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 Okay.
The rest of the notebook is all input interpretation.
Okay. Are we going to be able to get Jeremy or not?
I'm still looking for him.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back here. Okay. Too computery, too big. Okay. All right. So, what? Okay. This is the original design.
Yes, I believe it's the first one that you saw.
Okay.
And I think we went back and redesigned it. Now, I wasn't as heavily involved in the input interpretation development, so some of the details are a little fuzzy for me in that way, but we can take a look. This is just to give you an idea of what's available and some ideas that we have, and we can discuss those.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, I mean, I think the point is that we thought we might be able to get a non-computery version here, and it isn't working. Because, you know, when I read this, it's like beans. Okay. If I said refried 100 grams of refried beans, fine. That's a non-computery kind of natural language type version, right? But by the time it's bean, amount 100 grams, preparation refried, it's deeply computery. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
And at that point, we might as well put it in nice boxes and things and admit that it's computery and make a benefit out of it rather than oh, it's hard to read. But now you have an idea here. Oh.
So this is just a very quick and dirty thing that I threw together as another idea potentially to at least get us thinking of other ways to do this that may be a little less computery, hopefully.
And real quick, Jeremy will be here in about 10 minutes. He's finishing stuff up right now.
Well, is this a good example or is this a bad example? I mean, are you going to be able to pack the refried stuff in front of the actual food or not? I mean, in other words, do you know how to do the ordering here? Is this like it's like, you know, phylums and orders and things? In other words, is there a hierarchy here?
It's a little tricky, and that actually is in one of the bullet points that I've pointed out there, is that the order of them is a little tricky and can really vary from thing to thing. This was just to get a rough idea of what it might look like. You're right, though, that the order is rather complicated.
But is there? I mean, so what are the categories of thing?
There's about 50 of them, so it's a little complicated to come up with a hierarchy or a preferred ordering.
Okay, so what's an example of something which has a big stack of those guys?
I think we looked at the fried chicken leg was a great example.
Okay, so can you explain to me what would happen in this stacked strings case or labeled strings case with the fried chicken leg?
In the ideal case, it would probably say 150 grams of a fried chicken leg. And then
but you can't achieve that because you've got these things where, in the case of that chicken leg thing, the chicken leg. Okay, so let's take a look up here. Let's see. Now, what good does it do us to have this foods identifier here?
I think that's just the typical style of an alpha input interpretation, where they have what it is you're talking about, and I think that was one of the big complaints of having that.
Oh, I see, because this is an implicit entity of some kind. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, if you were to do control equals, for example, it would be an implicit entity.
Okay. I think we kind of need Jeremy or somebody from design here. Is this the stuff we're going to be talking about, basically? And I really need some more examples also of things where it gets more ornate, because I mean, this looks beautiful down here, but I haven't a clue whether that's the typical case or whether it's going to get crazy.
For typical examples that we get in practice from the partners, this will cover it. You can, of course, come up with more examples, but this is a real life case.
Okay, but can you please tell me what So wait a minute. This is the current implementation.
Yes.
How would you add a property down here? Would this be boxed and then you'd add the property outside it?
Possibly. I was thinking that maybe it could be on the left and then there wouldn't be any need for any boxes at all. And you could say calories in 150 grams of a delicious apple.
We don't
it's
want
more naturally speaking.
No, I understand that. But that's then changing. No, we specifically don't do that because we're trying to make clear what we're actually computing.
Sure. I mean, we can do the box thing.
We really need some better examples. This is too simple an example. It's really impossible to tell what's going on from this. Can we generate, how can we generate a more complicated example? Can I go to the website or can I go to?
Yeah, you could go to current and you could punch in, say, for example, fried chicken leg. That's probably the best example. Yes, these are a little simple, but given the short time, I haven't had a lot of time.
Is it al mode? Do I have to say al mode or not?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fried chicken leg. Are we discussing things like the feature space plot here?
I didn't plan on it, but we can, I guess.
Okay. So in your new proposal, that would become?
That would probably just be like that top example where it says red delicious apple, except it would probably be, in a perfect world, it would probably be fried, meaning a preparation, labeled underneath, chicken being food type underneath, leg being part.
Yeah, but there's no way you know to do that. There's no way. Because there are other things for which it would be, for which the part specifier is a prefix to the name of the food.
Right, and that's why I was thinking maybe we need, it's something I haven't dug into real deep. Michael and I had a few discussions not too long ago about using maybe a classifier or something similar to be able to figure out the proper order with minimal curation. Because finding these rules, there's always going to be an outlier, probably.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one of your possible ideas is it's sort of a computeristic thing where it's things being tagged, but we are deciding that it is not semantically meaningful to us what the ordering is here, and we are simply going to put it in an ordering that seems natural for humans. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I think that Michael, can you comment on that? Because this is an interesting case where, as a matter of fact, we haven't really thought about doing that. That is the concept that these attributes can be in any order. Well, these are implicit entity specifiers. Yep.
It's one of the things where the first very boxy one, it represents our spirit and what we typically do, even if it's not pretty in some sense. But this is kind of what we have done in many domains. It just gets a little bit slightly unwieldy in this one. I was thinking, okay, I still like this one actually. I think one of the reasons I feel like that this one isn't so easy to read is that they are basically grayed out and not grayed out. Maybe we need some more shades of it.
Possibly.
Like what you really want is the chocolate chip cookie on the right and the 100 gram. Like the food type and the added food type, it's more important than with an end, but really less important than the cookie and the chocolate chip.
Fair enough. But you see, it might also be the case that these ones, this idea, which hadn't really occurred before, of having heuristics to decide the ordering of a big stack like this is an interesting idea, because that could make it a lot less, incomprehensible. Because, for example, if you look at the economic properties and things, okay,
but
those, go ahead.
Honestly, I wouldn't go too far with this. Like with this one, I put 100 gram on top, something that we don't do, say, for chemicals, but for food, it seems to be more important in my opinion. And then then it becomes already, in my opinion, more natural. Like separating the amount in a slightly different box form than the end and width.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I mean, that would certainly be good in terms of uniformity with other stuff. So can I see examples of these boxed forms? Do we still have them available somewhere?
Not really. We have some old images. I could dig out a few more, but
but if I run in version 11 because this is running against the alpha server.
No, there's no way to get access to that without doing a lot of extra hoop jumping.
Okay, see if you can find some images.
Sure.
Are we still waiting for Jeremy?
Yes, we are. Sorry, I was on mute.
Can we check in with him again, please?
He'll be here shortly.
Okay. Okay, well, let's talk about, if we're talking about some other stuff, that is a disgusting looking picture. And I don't understand the labeling here. That's not the way you're planning to do labeling, right? Correct? That labeling on top is not the way you're planning to do labeling.
No, I don't believe so. I think that...
what is that one?
I don't understand what you're asking.
What I'm seeing here is labeling underneath,
yes.
Correct?
Right.
Why is that labeling on top?
That's probably because it's a single entity, and I think that's what the framework does by default, but I can change that.
Well, I mean, I don't see any point in having... Why are you repeating the input interpretation there?
But that's a specific item. That's not the entire input interpretation, so it's different.
We don't have a picture for every possible input.
Right.
So what is this? Is this an image of something related to this? Fried chicken?
So if you look at the result pod, there's a single food that it matches. We will change that to instance or instances or something like that. And then that's a picture that we have for that particular entity.
Well, you don't want to repeat that whole thing there.
Sure. We can just get rid of it.
What we should say is, so the nutrition facts and everything beyond that are for that particular instance. Is that correct?
For the most part, with the exception of feature space plots, which show more. So the feature space plot, for example, if you scroll a little bit further down.
Yeah, but whatever the red dot is in the feature space plot, which bizarrely isn't appearing at all here.
Right.
That red dot is for the instance, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the feature space plot.
Sure.
This one is frigging weird.
Jeremy's with us.
Okay, very good. By the way, there's a weird computeristic background audio, which would be nice to avoid. But anyway, let's talk about this feature space plot. I mean, I don't really get it right now. We talked about it a little bit last time. The fact that there's so much structure in it is fascinating. But what does it mean?
Andrew and I look quite a while. I don't think this will be easy to... In many cases, we will not be able to understand what the structure actually means.
Okay.
As I mentioned in the last meeting too, we've done a few more changes on what we feed to feature space plot, and what it produces is a little nicer looking, but there are still clumps that are probably not easy to explain.
But they mean something. They surely mean something. I mean, look, if we just get this version out into the product and we've got tooltips, we can look around what this is, for example. I mean, in this case, at the point where the feature space plot draws a picture of a chicken here, you'll know the world is coming to an end.
No, actually, I don't think it's so easy, Stephen. We made quite a few experiments. Feature space plot really looks at whatever you give it. For instance, has no idea about absolute versus relative. Like if you have, say, the data are all between 100 and 102, it still kind of scales it to use this data. And it's these structures that aren't really there for humans.
Okay, but so we should give it stuff that's as meaningful as possible. Otherwise,
Andrew and I have discussed this, and we will improve this.
Yeah, that's the.
Okay, but something. It's seeing something here. I mean, is it seeing weird measurement kind of conventions, or is this the leg of the chicken and that's the breast of the chicken or something? See what I'm saying? I mean, there's clearly a difference. It's clearly seeing some very definite structure here.
So the ones that you see on the website right now are only based on the basic nutrients or the proximates, carbs, calories, fat,
Okay,
protein.
fine, but that's dandy. But I'm still, this thing has 5 regions. Okay, they might be 5 different kinds of chicken meat. They might be, I don't know what they are, but there's something.
And I think that's the goal of the labels, is to try and give at least a rough.
Yeah, right. So can I get this in a place where I can look at it in more detail with tooltips and so on?
Maybe they may not be perfect tooltips, but you could try and get the feature space plot property through entity value.
Okay. So how would I do that?
Go into 11.3 or whatever, and then control equals fried chicken leg.
Do I want 11.3 or 12.0?
Probably 11.3. It's on production, so probably 11.3, I guess.
Actually, I could just go here.
So we pre-compute these and store them because they're at the food type level. If you want to regenerate them from scratch, you'll probably have to download the information for the whole set of data and then run it through feature space plot yourself, if that's what you want to do.
No, I want to do the pre-generated because it's
okay. So it might be easier to just pull out the chicken one. So if you do entity food type comma chicken.
Why isn't that auto-completing?
I don't know. And then the property is feature space plot.
Okay, there's some auto-completion problem here.
I will tell what I want people.
Now, I don't know if the individual foods themselves have tooltips on them. I think if you dig through the structure, there may be an entity there. I don't remember off the top of my head how I've had it set up. We've gone through some changes in how the data is actually handled.
What the heck is going on here? There is very definite structure here. So what is it?
I think we should not spend time on this right now because we will redo it anyway. Actually, I spent quite a while with elements, and with elements, I have a pretty good idea which one should clump together. And frequency, the result from feature space plot, is not what makes human sense.
So you're saying if I do this like with element data, what's a convenient way to do it?
Let me see if I find it. I can send you something.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, are you basically saying, because I mean, that will be a question for the machine learning folk.
Yeah, we had discussion with them.
I mean, because this sure looks like there's structure here. I mean, I don't know my chickens well enough to know what's going on here. These just look completely randomly different things. Yeah, I mean, these are different pieces of the chicken, and they're different. The manufacturers it's very weird.
And one of the reasons why we switched to using different nutrients than just the proximates is, I think, exactly this reason what you're bringing up is that it wasn't really as meaningful when you only use the basic nutrients. Once you actually pick out more meaningful nutrients to use, then the results become a little more interesting and more.
Why are there nutrients that are more meaningful and so on?
Michael and I, Michael, you may know more about this.
Like some. Okay, the example I said earlier, like if a certain kind of food more or less say has the same carbs, it is an irrelevant thing to pick out the minute differences in this.
Yeah, for sure.
So you must decide from the outside, should somebody look at this delta or not? Because the algorithm has no idea about small and large.
Well, wait a second. I don't understand that. Because I mean, it's like the whole point in feature space plot, if you're doing pictures of cats and dogs, the fact that there were 2 cats with differently groomed, whiskers or something, is not going to make them that far apart in the feature space plot. Why is it the case that tiny changes in carbs make things far apart here?
I think it is because arrays of numbers are handled totally different than arrays of quantities.
Oh, well, that's probably a mistake.
Like the dimensional things and.
Well, that's probably a mistake. I mean, probably what has to happen is the feature space plot has to conform the first step. I mean, gosh, maybe what's happening here is that one of these is measured in metric and one in imperials. I mean, completely crazy like that. Okay, anyway, so, but I mean, that sounds like a problem that there isn't a correct feature extractor for quantities. Is that the issue?
That's at least part of it. I'm sorry, I'm still searching my notebooks where I have it.
Okay. Well, okay, fine.
Andrew, do you happen to have it handy? I can't find it right now.
I can take a look. It may take a little bit.
Okay.
If I knew we were going to talk about this, I'd probably have it a little more handy. But
okay, let's go back to our main issues here. Okay, let's start off with something fairly easy. This is apparently a nutrition compass plot. And why does this one not have any red in it? Jeremy, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Legend says 20%. So when food's in smaller amounts, the daily values don't get anywhere near 100% daily value, and so we have a lighter gray outline to indicate 20%. It says right there in the legend if you look.
Yeah, it's obscure. Okay, so Jeremy, what this is trying to show is how much foods achieve the recommended daily values. So this red line is indicating it, yes, you reached the daily value. Now, presumably sometimes you can go above the daily value, like here, right? Right?
Yes.
And then for some reason we are showing an outer boundary that's 200%.
So
boy, this is pretty weird. Okay, so the main thing you're trying to get is how does, so this apparently is a 20%. Jeremy, do you understand what this plot is showing?
Yeah, and we looked at this earlier, like a month ago, through the Alpha Design Tweaks meeting. So this has been tweaked a little bit.
I think it's still incomprehensible.
Okay.
So the main issue is, I mean, in this case, the 20% is really a big deal, right? That's not just a footnote. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there should be a great big 20% that indicates that outer boundary there isn't the 100% line. You get what I'm saying, guys?
I think an earlier version that I had done something like that. I think I had something like that too, but I think at some point someone said to remove those. I don't know. I think it cleaned up a little nicer, but yeah, I may have also gotten rid of some of the readability.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should not need a legend. Okay?
Sure.
Other than some kind of footnote. But what we need to do here, what would happen? Okay, so let's imagine that we simply see, okay. What about the possibility of having, I'm thinking, color exterior to this 100% line that indicates, yes, I mean, it also doesn't really look right to have you, like, you're in the red zone now. You've eaten too much vitamin A. Yeah, you turn orange if you eat too much, really, really too much vitamin A, but vitamin A, sorry. But you see what I'm saying? It's like you did what you should do and you hit the red line. That seems wrong. Am I making sense?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, maybe the colors just need to be changed a bit.
Well, arguably, it would make more sense to put. Okay, Jeremy, help me out.
Red's usually our highlighted color, so it looks to me like this is flipped. That the outer should be yellow and the red should be the interior, showing what's highlighting.
I agree. That's the first step. Okay, so then we've got these weird fiducial marks inside, right? Which again are pretty weird. I mean, like the radial lines are not the same as as these constant value lines, right? What is the role of the radial lines? It's merely to guide the eye about, oh yes, that little pokey piece represents carbs. Is that correct?
Right.
So it's not the same type of thing. I mean, the spider doesn't have a full web here going both ways.
But there's nothing special here, like that's the case for any compass plot.
Well, where else do we have compass plots?
Okay, we don't have it, but I mean out there in the world.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at what compass plots.
Another name might be a radar plot, as an example.
I think actually that's even more common.
That may be more common than compass.
Yeah, right. Let's see. Let's see what people have done out there. Great. Nutrition Compass gives us, that's the name of this thing, right?
I believe so, yes. I think Michael showed me a paper once there, yeah.
That's better. Okay, so that's much more obvious, except it's not telling one. I mean, the fact that it has that spider web look is kind of weird. Okay. So, okay, so that's a typical radar plot. Do you know, and is Brett working on a radar plot thing? Do you know?
I had mentioned it to him. I don't know if he's working on it.
Can we see if we can find him and ask him?
I think there's an example that uses sector chart somehow to emulate this sort of stuff. In my experience, it was much easier to just do it in graphics myself. That's how I have it set up.
Okay. Actually, you know, this thing where the radial lines, I mean, I like that scale there, something like that scale. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very detailed.
Well, it's also very obscured. I mean, so your basic point is we need a general style for doing these radar plots.
Having the percentages inside the plot is nice, though. I like that interior marking of the axes.
Yeah, but what would we do here? I mean, it would kind of spoil the content of the plot to do that.
You just have a little 10%, 20% here for the two lines.
Well, except that what, and that would make it clear the extent to which you do or do not reach the recommended daily, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which could then be in some kind of dotted orange or something, rather than.
For cases that we don't meet 100 to, we could have a side by side, right? The full 100, where you see this little bitty, highlighted region, and then the zoomed version of the plot, right, where you can kind of zoom in and see what's going on.
Yes, that's possible, and that would certainly make it clear how close you are or not. And I kind of like that idea because it seems relevant to do that. Unless it's so small in the middle that the thing just,
it typically does look that way, though. That's the reason why we put the zoom in, because originally we had hard-coded it to stay at like 150 or maybe even 100 or something like that. But most of the time, it was unreadable. It just looked like a little dot. It was really hard to tell what was bigger and smaller at that scale.
Yeah. I don't know whether it's better to have vertical or horizontal things, and it's a pity when that these things. Yes, it's a pity that they get obscured like this. Looks like a lot of people are doing them vertical. Well, this cobweb look seems to be a very common thing. Yeah, I think we'd be, I also don't quite understand why the interior is gray. So we're going to have a red border there. The interior is gray.
We don't have to do gray. I think we could go a shade of red, right? It'd be pinkish colored, but we could.
Yeah, I think that's better. Right. And then, with the RDA being whatever they're now called, DV being some kind of orange or something version of these other lines, which, I don't know whether this dashing really helps us. I think just a light gray would do better than the dashing.
On the radially outward ones?
Yeah, I'm thinking both for the radial ones and for the, I mean, given that most people seem to cobweb it sort of equally with the radial and azimuthal, we could probably try that. And then we need a scale. Now, in the way you're doing these plots, you always have a vertical line, right? But you're not necessarily having a horizontal line, correct?
Yeah, I think that was the goal, is to have a flat piece on the bottom.
It looks kind of more symmetric, I feel like.
Yeah.
We are much more trained for left-right than up-down symmetries.
Yeah. I wish we didn't. I mean, I wish we had a way to take the scale and put it outside the plot. But I think that will be even more obscure.
Maybe you could have a couple of markers, say 25%, 50%, 75%, have the markers in the plot and then have the explanation of the markers in the legend. It's a little bit overkill, but it would allow to achieve
Well,
this.
so what we do is have horizontal markers in here, horizontal ticks in here, and then on the edge have the ticks go. You see, it's not going to look right. That's not going to look right because it's not going to be. Obviously, this plot is symmetric. It's
CN or DN.
Yes, quite. What do we do with the plot labels for polar plots? I think we just go right on top, right? I mean, we don't try to avoid. Yeah, we're just having the
parametric plot is, I think, what you want with the filling.
Yeah, but you see, that's not right because this is trying to label. It's a polar plot that we want because we're trying to label the radius, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, are there any solutions? I mean, look, if we just look through other people's versions of radar plots, we're basically seeing the same non-solution over and over again. We're seeing this, but clearly these people are not, I think less clearly, they're not, they're not filling in the interior here. And folks like that are just going over.
But that one is better. A lot of these have really generous offsets for the labels, the percentages. Seems like you want to be really tight.
What in this?
Like this one, yeah, that one's better. At least it's really tight to the line that is labeling.
Why are you even labeling? Why are you not putting the percentages up on the? Yeah, it doesn't work.
I think it's harder to digest.
Well, the alternative would be to pick a round number for the outer boundary here and just label it in big. That's not going to work. You have to indicate to people that this is a scale.
What about having the current azimuthal dashed ones of different colors and have a legend for the number?
People are not that good at recognizing colors, and it's going to look like a rainbow.
But the only reason for the red boundary is that this is the bad thing. Now you entered the bad area. It doesn't really mean it's 20, 80%, doesn't really matter.
What are you talking about? There's no bad area. I mean, the bad area would be you're not getting enough vitamin C or something, right?
Or too much.
I mean, what is bad is relative. Too much is bad and too little is also bad.
Yeah, well, so...
But this is only supposed to be indicating where are you in this range. Right?
Yeah, but red is not the right color for that. So that's we'll use red as the highlight color here.
No, everything inside is more or less green. So this is because that's kind of still in the daily recommended value.
What are you talking about? I mean, if you don't eat enough, vitamin C or something, you'll eventually get scurvy, right?
Yes.
Right. So it's not good if you have too little vitamin C.
And for a lot of nutrients, the other extreme is also very bad too. So it's kind of a Goldilocks zone right around the.
Right. So let's color it gold, and then we'll be good. Okay, but so I think we should try making these continuous, not dashed, but light gray. And I think the number of them, how many of them do we want to have going out radially? Obviously, in different cases, like here, you're only showing the 50% lines, which I think is completely obscure. I mean, I think we do better showing multiple, lines, because it makes it a little clearer what they are. Otherwise, they might be some completely different kind of thing, right? So I would show like on the order of 4 or 5 radial, points, just like you are in this case here.
I'm a little worried that if the plot stays this size, that it's going to be difficult to read.
Read what?
To read the entire plot and the labels where the new lines that you want to have put in are.
No. I'm just suggesting, instead of dashed lines, which are very distracting,
right,
these be light gray lines.
Sure, solid.
That will be fine. But now the question is, the only thing we're trying to resolve is where we put the numbers in. And I think we should try running them up a vertical axis here where we have that a solid gray and we have tick marks on it. That's what I would recommend trying. Let's try that, and let's remove the caption here.
So they're only tick marks? There's no numbers on them?
No, they're numbers as well.
Numbers as well. Okay, and you want to have like 5 of them? So 20, 40, 60?
We don't necessarily have to mark all of them. And we could mark...
Okay. Just like every other one.
Maybe 20... 0 we don't have to mark. I think it's obvious. And then maybe 25, 50, 75, 100.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Okay, onward we go. Okay, this plot. So that one is fine, but now the question here is, when we have only a single point here, why isn't that just a single width 0 object? Why is there any width there?
I put some, I made it a little wider so that it was a little more visible. Otherwise it looks very, very thin and kind of difficult to see. Perhaps a point is better, but as a quick hack, I just put some fuzz in there so that it would be visible.
I think a point would be better. I think a circular disc of the orange color would be a better thing to do, rather than faking it.
Sure.
Like that. Makes sense. And we should get a certain size for that disc, which I think should be about 2/3 the height of this thing here, would be my suggestion. Jeremy, any comments?
2/3 the height of the existing
of this object here.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. By the way, what is this font here? I don't think that's the right font for that, is it? I mean, shouldn't it be the same label font that we're using for these things here?
Yeah, we've discussed that. I think that's what the framework has as default, and I don't know what to do with it other than manually change it, which seems like the wrong thing to do, but I'll look into that. That's one of those things on my to-do list that I haven't quite got to.
We have a suggestion on the live stream that I do not understand. How about having a fixed empty space in the center, making the radar plot like a Möbius strip? That I simply...
If I correctly interpret, the Möbius strip reference I don't get, but maybe something like the 0% is not in the center, but like in an annulus.
Yeah, I think that's obscure. I mean, I think people have the best chance they have of realizing that something is 0 is seeing that it's at the center. I don't think it helps. I don't know what we put in the center region.
Maybe one thing they're suggesting is, for example, the calories that go straight up. Maybe replace that so that nothing is there and just have 25, 50.
That's true. Okay, so that would be I get it. Right. So in other words, if you were to make this be a 4 plot, this one be a 4 plot, I don't think that will look very good, because I think you need to see this kind of gem-shaped object in the middle rather than something which gapes open at the top, I think.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's keep going down here. Okay, the big thing. So, Jeremy, we needed a spec for these things to be thinner
Yeah, Chris just spec'd that, and I think passed it, but I just was in a meeting where those are spec'd to be much thinner.
Okay, fine, all good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's address the main story. Okay, the main story is what the input interpretation looks like. Okay, so we've been doing a variety of experiments trying to make it more sort of natural language readable. I don't think they're working because I think we can't guarantee that, for example, we have here this new suggestion, which is magnificent when we know exactly which order to put things in. But as soon as we're on the chicken leg story, wherever that one is here, and we need to say, you know, chicken leg, we can't say leg chicken. You know, we have to say fried chicken leg, which is a really weird ordering that we cannot predict easily. So we are tending to return to our previous idea, which is to do something more similar to what we have traditionally done, which is something like this. Okay. But what Michael is pointing out, and again, let's see, did you manage to find any more examples of this by any chance?
Not really, no. Those were done by a colleague, and I don't have that information handy right now.
Okay.
Maybe in a future meeting we can pull some of those out, but at this point I don't think I can.
Okay. And by the way, this is the feature space plot. What is this?
So there are various experiments. What actually, like if you want to make a feature space plot of metals based on various characteristics, what do you actually put in? Do you put quantities in numbers? If the numbers, do you scale them between a min and max, or do you use them between absolutes, or do you use ranks?
So why does it matter to a feature space plot? I don't know what method it's using, but if it was using multidimensional scaling or some such other thing, why would it matter what the overall scales are?
Let's see. Etienne had answered this question. I had asked it too. It does matter.
Okay. Well, no doubt if it has negative numbers, it can care about that. But there may be a situation in which, you know, if you know that it's only positive numbers, you can use a different kind of scaling. Okay, so what are we seeing here? So this is SI base units.
Everything in SI base units.
Well, it's not completely stupid, is it? I mean, it's got iron, cobalt, nickel next to each other.
That's not bad. Yeah. I think the gold is a little bit far out.
Is tungsten really friendly with iridium?
High density.
Yeah, lead and thallium are very similar. That's right. I don't know these ones well enough to know. I'm surprised bismuth. Well, it has some. I mean, it's sort of similar to lead, but it has. So this is kind of the modern, you know, if Mendeleev had been a machine learning enthusiast, what would he have done? Type thing. Probably been very confused.
So this is based on atomic number, atomic mass density, melting point, boiling point, Brinell hardness, break modulus, sound speed, electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, and thermal expansion to really give a fair amount of data, not just kind of the easy ones.
Well, I think it would be good to ask an actual chemist about this, because this is nothing here looks obviously stupid to me.
No, that's not so much the point. The point is that the first one, the first plot, kind of the out of the box.
But I am a little bit confused by why is manganese in with a bunch of these rare earths? I don't know. I just don't know. Okay, let's go back and look at your first plot.
See, that's the out of the box is really not very useful.
But so that's probably because of a scale problem with the quantities, yes?
Potentially.
All right, so scaling between min and max. That's very weird. I mean, iron, cobalt, nickel always seem to hang out together, which is good, and chromium nearby and vanadium nearby. That's all good. Where's potassium? It's not on here.
I think I only used the ones where we had values for all of the properties I mentioned.
I see. Okay, fine.
Because kind of missing data adds yet another problem to the.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if like it was something like 12 properties, so they live in some 12-dimensional space. It is really far from obvious what's kind of the best manifold. So this is.
I agree. It's a good example, though. I mean, in this case, bismuth has made it quite close to lead. Okay. What's this? This is using rankings for each of them?
Yes.
I think that's a much more random thing to do. And indeed, this plot looks a lot more random.
I agree. That's definitely not the right thing to do. I do agree.
Okay, what does absolute scaling mean?
Good question. What does scale up? Oh yeah, everything between 0 and 1 with respect to the largest.
That's not obviously stupid. Let's see what this does. Why on earth are copper and silver so close?
I mean, both are good conductors. Both are good heat conductors by Wiedemann-Franz. So,
yeah, fair enough. And it does seem that iridium and tungsten seem to hang out together a lot. Not on that plot, which I don't believe in at all. Yeah, I mean, look. Okay, rhenium. Huh.
all of them capture something. I'm just saying that reading something of a feature space plot adds a touch of reading tea leaves.
it's yeah. Well, so when is that not the case? Answer: when you have definite clustering.
I think it's not the case if you just have 3 properties, because then we are very clear in thinking about 3-dimensional things. We are very bad in thinking in 8-dimensional spaces where the relevant things.
Sure, but if it is the case that you have 2 very well separated things like cats and dogs, pictures of cats and dogs, they will simply separate on the feature space plot.
But this cheating, I feel like, because this is basically in principle component space, you just have only 2 again.
I see what you're saying. Whereas these are genuinely...
They're genuine high-dimensional.
Yeah. Well, but in the case of foods, what do we believe the true dimensionality of food space is? I mean, it's like you could say, okay, I could make the argument, look at color space, for example, right? You could say, oh my gosh, it's infinite. We got all of these spectral response curves and all this kind of thing, spectral curves and so on, and it's infinite dimensional and it's all hopeless. But we know that for human perception purposes, 3 dimensions is, or the chromaticity plot is just fine.
Right.
So the question would be for foods,
with respect to perception, it's probably 5 or 6 dimensional, something like the tastes of things, sour, sweet, and so on. But with respect to nutrients, most of them we cannot detect.
Okay, but I mean, the physiological effect. The question is the physiological, how high dimensional is the physiological effect?
Probably 50.
Really?
We need plenty of different rare elements.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And if we don't have them, we have a problem. Yet, kind of an absolute scale, there are picograms of them we need.
Yes. Well, okay, so we need to understand whether this feature space plot makes any sense. So, but I think the first step there, it seems like there are 2 things which are obvious issues. One is dealing with the appropriate treatment of quantities and units, which seems like that's a general problem we should solve. And the other thing we should solve is missing data. And I think Etienne has ideas about how to deal with missing data in these things. It seems not undoable, given that we have all these, imputation techniques from machine learning. So in other words, when the data is missing, it should be able to implicitly impute some value there. Okay, let's go back to what we were looking at before. I mean, this is interesting, but okay. So Michael is making the point if we take this case, really what we want to see is that this is a chocolate chip cookie, 100-gram chocolate chip cookie. And Michael is claiming that perhaps we can save this by having different sort of graying conventions, so to speak. I mean,
what I was thinking, Jeremy, was the food on the left follows our standard, but it's kind of irrelevant. When you ask for food, you know you ask for food. The width and an amount are already pretty grayed down right now. And the food type, the added food types, they are kind of our classification. It's not really of relevance for the user, so they could be also gray. The cookie and the chocolate chip, they should stay very prominent.
Oh, wait. Where's this is added food types is chocolate chip. What were you saying about the...
Yeah, I was saying kind of like the cookie and the chocolate chip is very important.
Okay, so food type and added food types.
Is, in my opinion, not so important.
Which is not so... Oh, the actual labeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That the cookie is a food type is a technicality of how we describe the world.
Yes, I understand. The fact that it's a core at its core, it's a cookie, and it is also tagged as having chocolate chips.
Like there would be like 2 glasses of beer. It's under liquid beverages. Yes, it's correct, but you know this. This doesn't have to be put in dark letters in your face.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that seems wrong. So one question is, in a case like this, we are highlighting the entity with a gray background.
We think type, you mean?
Well, no, the entity France here.
Oh, I was looking at the front one.
Whereas foods on the left-hand side here, that's being highlighted, which doesn't seem all that relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I wonder what it would look like if we highlighted maybe perhaps this is wrong. We're certainly not highlighting 100 grams in usual cases. 100 grams, tungsten. Let's just see what that does. I see that just as doing that. Is that what we're doing for all the chemical stuff? Just saying 100 grams of?
I think so. There we don't have much variety. Like for food, we have slices and whatever. There far more variety.
But that's not counted as an amount, or is it?
It is.
And the ordering, so we've got a couple of degrees of freedom here. We've got the ordering of these. What's the with and the and doing? Do we need those?
I think that's the default for reverse lookup type things, if I remember correctly, but we can change those.
Well, but wait a minute. Do we have things like without? Is that what we're trying to deal with?
In principle, yes. If it works, I'm not sure.
Okay, so we might in fact need something different there.
This is a collection of various suggestions which we're working on.
That's a whole nother can of worms here.
I think this is the boxless version that I have included that I don't think anyone liked for some reason. I wasn't around for a lot of that discussion.
Yeah, this was not Andrew.
And why didn't we like the boxless version?
I don't know the answer to that one.
You said it should be more look like computed things.
Well, because we were not able to correctly, in the case of the chicken leg or whatever, we were not able to correctly put it in a form that was read reasonably.
Right, in the right order. We couldn't.
And we won't in general be able to do that.
I think that's correct, but I think for practical purposes, we can probably reach more than 99% correctness.
In that situation. Okay, so the alternative, though, is something more like this. Look, the problem is that this is not readily readable. I mean, this is not readily, if it jumped out at me, cookie, chocolate chip, 100 grams, then I would be probably perfectly happy that it had some extra structure in it.
This was a suggestion by Michael that we use different gray levels here.
No, I know. So I'm asking.
I mean, maybe, okay, so what about the following? We put the current right column on the left, and we put the amount on the top.
Yeah.
And then
we put paren food type, paren added.
Something like this.
But that denies the possibility of a without. Right? And if we did have a without, it's a big deal. I mean, okay, first of all, is it realistic to have a without? Does the framework work with that?
You can do those queries with an entity value with contains none and that sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not sure if any parses off the top of my head that.
So in the case of the in language version of this, right? Can I get to that? The in language version will have its own stack, right? So if I say,
are you talking through control equals, or are you talking
about what it produces the output?
I'm not sure we've spent a lot of time on that yet, but
but that's got to be consistent as well.
Right.
Okay, so this is one where we have an original. Okay, so there's. I mean, honestly, even that is a little bit better than what we have over here, because we're really highlighting the cookie chocolate chip. So if I go back here, I don't know how to. Okay, and I say 100-gram chocolate chip cookie. What's a modifier that I can use here?
You mean one to have
with oatmeal might work? I'm not sure.
Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. What a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, but notice that what this is doing is it's not showing a with and an and at all. It's simply showing this tag here. So what would it look like if it had a without?
It contains none in there if you want to change the
exactly.
So if you
make input form of the yellow box.
Yeah.
Okay. So I take the yellow box.
Copy paste.
Okay. Now what?
Then you can copy that, paste it in a new cell, and instead of using a list around, or instead of see, it says entity property food type goes to food type cookie. Multi-click on the entity for the cookie.
Well, let me do it for the.
Sure, yeah, you could do it on any of them. Cut that out and then wrap it in contains none. And it'll need a list too.
Inside the contains none there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay. Well, I mean, that's not a bad way to do it. I think it's a little unfortunate that this isn't, that this isn't centered, that isn't, there isn't a hard line in the middle for the colons. I don't see why we wouldn't want to do that, to center this. Get what I'm saying?
Okay, if we would do this, the none of, would it be part of the left side or the right side?
Right side.
Okay.
And I think it will be much more visible if we do that, because it'll break the,
understood.
Do we have to have the parent be foods? I mean, can't it be the food type be the parent? And just, it would reduce a layer.
No, it's a different entity type. You see, kind of the type is food and food type.
But in the box, I mean, we're just worried about the gray box short form.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah, when you turn it to a box structure, can't we get rid of the foods?
Yeah, we probably could. That's a different issue. So
you mean in the alpha world?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes. I mean, honestly, this to me isn't that bad. If we could just render this in a nice way with black and white as opposed to our, yellow box approach, it seems like we could make that work.
Sure. Yeah, I think so too. I think at the time when this was originally done, I think it looked a little different. I think it's gone through a little more design since then, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's probably
Okay, so
why.
now what are we doing with the entity instance, the 100 grams thing? Because this here is recording as 100. I mean, we would need another way to do the 100 grams. Do we have, what are other ways that we've done the 100 gram thing?
I think it should be on top. From human speaking, you never put this at the end.
Yeah, if it's not on the left, then the top is probably...
Okay, and if it's a multi-food combination, we're basically just doing plus, plus, plus. What's that?
Yeah.
Or an alternatives bar, I think, for comparisons.
Fine. All right, well, look, I think this is what we should try. And then essentially what we're doing here is we're graying the food type, the added food types, the variety, whatever, and we're putting these in black, the cookie, chocolate, chip. And then whatever we're doing here, I mean, possibly even this italic form isn't bad. Don't know if that's the right thing for this. Maybe it's a darker gray, but italic form. Would be my suggestion there. Make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
We should at least try. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this is good progress, actually. I like this quite a bit. And I think merging the way that it looks in the language form and the Wolfram Alpha form is a good thing. All right, what else do we have to go over here?
I think that's all we had ready for now, being a quick turnaround time between meetings.
Should we go back to the notebook from the last time? Because
we can.
Yeah.
Do you still have that notebook?
Probably not. No, you should resend it.
Sure, I'll get that.
Okay, we don't have super long here.
Yeah.
So.
And we made good progress.
Yes, I think so. This was a good result. Okay. And we just don't know what to do with the feature space plot stuff. I mean, maybe it's a stupid idea to have the foods on a feature space plot. I don't really know. What about a dendrogram?
I think that's really hard to say. Like if somebody literally orders some food and wants some quick information, they don't have enough time to digest this. Somebody really plays around. I think it's a very entertaining and interesting thing.
Yeah.
I think I just sent it to you again. If you could take a look. Hopefully it wasn't caught up by any spam filtering or anything. Oh, good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is there's so little labeling here.
And I spoke with Brett and his people. You had suggested labeling the outliers.
Yes.
And they say they had made some experiments, but because the outliers, per definition, are on the side, they run into so many problems that the labels were cut off that they cannot.
Then they should put the labels so that they're on the interior. I mean, they have a label avoidance technology, I think.
They say right now, not in the next month.
Okay, fair enough. Right, I think we had gone over most of this. The coming soon stuff.
Okay, so we are mostly ready.
I think we're in good shape here. Now, this plot here. We talk about this plot?
Do what we wanted to change.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Time.
Okay. Well done, guys. Talk to you all soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.